All right, guys, this is our second webinar training series for the private label, the Easy Way, PPL 2.0, whatever you want to call it, group. It's an honor to have you guys here. The first one we talked about why private label is hot, and we talked about kind of your strategy. And before we go into the next video series that we're going to do, or the next webinar is going to be about getting into choosing a product, we want to pause, and in lesson 4, page 3, we talk about brand building versus merchant building. And you guys all know what merchant building is. It's pretty much what every Amazon seller does. They're just basically finding a product to sell, anything that's profitable. You don't care about a certain brand or a certain niche. You literally are just anything that's profitable, and that's merchant building. That's what everybody understands. That's easy to understand. Tonight, we're going to talk about what if you want to build a brand. And Jenny and I are not the experts of that, and so that's why we brought Jason Miles on, who is the expert of brand building. He's written several books, all the power books, Instagram Power, Pinterest Power. He's the owner and he co-owns Liberty Jane Clothing with his brilliant wife, Cinnamon. And you guys, he's not a stranger to this community. He's spoken at CES multiple times. Really, really good friend of mine. But he's going to go into brand building, and he's got Kyle Hamer with him. Kyle is the Facebook ads expert, and they have a Shopify mentoring program. So as you guys go along and you're thinking, man, I really do want to build a brand and I want to take it off Amazon, these are your guys. They know it better than anybody that I know. And so if you don't know yet whether you want to build a brand or not, please know it's totally okay. This is just information for you to have when and if you're ready to make that jump. But we could think of nobody more qualified to talk about how to build a brand than Jason. So, and he is a university professor. So if he says anything that's over your head, it's okay. We can answer questions in the group. Don't feel like you have to implement all this stuff right away. Some of you guys may never decide to build a brand, and it's okay if you don't. But if you decide to do it, this information will be here, and he's going to show you things that you need to be thinking about if brand building is a goal for you. So did I do good, Jason? Is that good?
Awesome. Amazing.
All right.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you for letting us jump in with this. This would be really fun. Just one quick question. Did we do the handouts accessible to people?
We didn't.
We did not, but I can get it to them.
No worries. There's a PDF PDF that has all my slide deck with the handout style notes. If we want to throw that into the chat or however we can share it, just so people have something to take the notes on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we good? You want me to jump in?
Yeah, go right to it.
Okay, totally cool. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I've got this right here. How's that looking?
Looks awesome to me.
You recording?
I am.
Okay.
Yep, we are recording. Thanks for asking.
All right. Okay, I'm going to jump in. And then I can't see the chat at the moment, so our awesome team here will help me with the chat conversation, and feel free to, of course, interrupt me. So thanks so much again for allowing us to join the community tonight and be a part of it. It's been a real blast to be a part of the group for the last few months and really learn more from the private label, the Easy Way perspective. And so tonight, what I want to do is walk through two big ideas as it relates to building a brand. And, I think Ryan framed it really, really well. The idea that you've got an option to focus on building a merchant strategy where brand is really incidental in a way, or you have the opportunity to start to think through a real, I guess what you could call a high-functioning brand or a complete brand concept. And it's a fielder's choice. You get to decide what you want to do, right? And so that's sort of the fun of being an entrepreneur. So I'm going to walk through these two big ideas. And then, of course, we'll have tons of time for Q&A. And again, if there's a chat question, or Ryan, Jenny, or Christy want to jump in and ask me a question, that's totally awesome. So if you're setting up a brand and you need ideas, or you're just in the merchant steps of beginning to create the private label, the Easy Way idea, and you're thinking, what should I do in the future? How can I weave branding into this? Or if you already have a brand and you want to revamp it or evaluate it or have some professional tools to look at it, then this I think is going to be very helpful for you tonight. So as I mentioned, I'll talk about two big ideas. The first one's called James Bergen's Iceberg Framework. And it really gives everyone an opportunity to understand how to apply branding concepts in a logical, methodical way. And I was always sort of confused about branding stuff until I started to really research, and I found this framework and I really locked onto it because it really presents an orderly, step-by-step, kind of framework that you can use to make what can seem to be a very confusing process very straightforward. And then we're going to walk through naming methods and process and sort of how the pros approach naming. And so I think it'll be a good time. So let's do that. And then, of course, we'll do the Q&A at the end. Well, Ryan mentioned our story. So Kyle and I have a business together, Winning on Shopify, where we do coaching program. And we also teach online marketing at Northwest University. We co-teach a course together, so that's awesome. Kyle's there. I guess you can't see him because you're looking at my slides, but give us a shout out there, Kyle.
Hey, everybody. You have to apologize for my voice. I'm just getting over being sick, so I sound a little funky.
Oh. Well, awesome. So we won't tax his voice too much tonight, or else it's going to blow out.
There won't be a lot of talking from me.
Yeah.
Just don't blow your nose.
That's right.
So Kyle and I have had the privilege of working with over 4,500 Shopify website builders in the last 9 months. Personally sold several $1 million online through our own brands. It's just really been an honor to be able to begin to work with a lot of entrepreneurs this last year, particularly through Shopify. And so we've seen a ton of brands. We've seen a lot of great ones. We've seen some okay ones, and we've seen some really bad ones. And so tonight we'll talk about the good, bad, and ugly. And of course, we're critics of our own branding work as much as anyone else's. And we're happy to talk about our own flaws and problems and warts and that kind of thing with our own work. But I thought what we might do tonight that would be fun as well is focus on a brand that we're probably all familiar with. And that is Death Wish Coffee. And if you're familiar with Mike Brown and the Death Wish Coffee story, yeah, I mean, most of us we're all his fan, boys and girls, and we just like what he's done. And so I thought I'd use that as sort of the example tonight, so that you don't have to hear about doll clothes and stuff like that. So, the real question that everybody's asking is, how can you create a brand that actually does work for you? And by that, I mean engages people at a mental and emotional level and helps you in your sales journey, And, even if you're just starting out with a private label, the Easy Way product, and you're just setting it up, the question's still the same. Can you create a brand that actually adds a little bit extra horsepower to your sales cycle, and a brand that adds just a little bit more hook or a little bit more engagement, and from the very beginning have something that is an asset to your business? And I think the answer is yes. And so we'll walk through how you do that tonight. We'll use Death Wish Coffee as the example. So you can quote me on this one. I don't know why I put it in quotes. I'm quoting myself. Inception.
You've arrived when you're now quoting.
That's awesome.
Most brands are tragically flawed and produce little, if any, impact. But the important thing to note is, even if you set up a quick and dirty brand just in an afternoon for a private label product, you are making a brand. There is no non-branded product. Even the yellow aisle on the Lucky grocery stores when I was a kid, where it was the generic aisle, that was a brand that had a lot of emotional power. And so, even if you're doing a quick job of setting up a brand, you are doing branding. The problem is with troubled brands, they're usually hastily created without a lot of thoughtful methodology, and they don't add value to the business that controls them, right? And so the question is, how do you avoid that? When you avoid it, when you do things right, you make yourself memorable. You have an asset that instantly can embed your story into the mind of the consumer for future recall. And you can explain a bold promise that will stick with people and that they'll even appreciate, and so much more. I mean, brands can do a lot of work if they're set up right and managed well. So let's look at how you do that. Let's talk through how you actually, can make that a reality for yourself and your business. I love this concept of the iceberg metaphor. It's really, it helps us break down and understand the concept of a brand very quickly and easily. And James Bergen came up with it. He's a great marketer. And the concept is pretty straightforward. And the iceberg metaphor immediately begins to make sense when you realize that brands have visible elements and they have invisible elements. And just like with an iceberg, the invisible elements are usually the bigger, more important part, the part that can really sink a ship like Titanic or whatever. And really are the thing that a casual observer won't notice and won't even recognize, but it's a major part. And so that's the idea of the iceberg concept. And so it's pretty easy to just categorically say, well, what's visible and what's not visible? And then make a list of the things on each side of that equation. And so tonight I want to walk you through, several factors for each of those. And if you've got the handouts, print them out and just take notes, doodle on it, and you can start to apply it to your individual situation. I would say this, that of all the time and energy somebody should take to create a brand, the invisible elements are the more important part. And they really secretly govern the power that a brand has. When a brand has what I call emotive power, emotional power, it's because either by luck or by design, somebody's created that brand to have a compellingness that really engages with people emotionally. And you see this all the time. And so that's what we want to work through, is how do you engineer that in a few quick steps, right? So the invisible elements, what are they? Well, the first one is the brand promise. And that's the idea that you have to declare yourself as different than everyone else. And a lot of people, when I ask them, well, what's your brand emphasis? They'll say, oh, it's quality. It's I want quality, high quality. And that's going to be it. And the problem with that, of course, is every company will say that they want to be a quality product. That's not different than any of the competitors, right? So you've got to come up with that uniqueness, that differentiator. And this is some of the hardest work. I don't know if you've seen these commercials in your area, but lately in Seattle area, there's been these commercials for this brand. And if they ever hear me say this, I apologize, but I guess I'll just say it. It's the most ridiculous product concept I think I've seen in a long time. And they're spending literally millions and tens of millions on TV spots. And it's this brand called Untuck It, a shirt that's designed to be worn untucked. Yep. And I think to myself, their product differentiator is literally that their shirt is designed to be untucked when any shirt can be worn untucked. I just don't, it doesn't work for me personally as a differentiator.
You're too smart for that.
But nonetheless, you could see very clearly that in that brand concept, that is what they're hanging their hat on. That's what they've built the whole idea around, is that brand promise. Now, if you're just starting out and you've got a private label product, you can create a brand promise for it. This is the fascinating part. You can create a brand promise for it that makes it unique, even if it's a marginally commodity type product. And so the question is, how can you think through doing that? But it's totally doable. It's available to you if you'll think through, how can I position this as a product that will stand out in the mind of the consumer? The second thing is a brand personality.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can you just, you're kind of, I feel like you're kind of throwing around brand and product as meaning almost the same thing. Can you differentiate that a little bit in this context?
Sure. Yeah. So you're going to create a product that has a label that has a brand name. It will be a branded product,
Mhm.
right? As soon as you're doing that, you're declaring a position in the market that you have the opportunity to think through all these layers for, right? And that would mean you could literally be registered doing business as that brand name, build a website, et cetera, et cetera. So brand work happens at the product level. It also, of course, happens at the corporate level, where you can have a brand that's a multi-product brand. So that's one of the things you'll have to think through. Does that help at all? Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just thinking this through. So a lot of the people that I think a lot of the people that are on this webinar and where we're positioning this in the lessons, we're looking at brand work that's happening maybe more at the corporate level because they haven't quite chosen a product yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, maybe, or maybe they just focus on a product brand strategy.
Okay.
So
I think
I was going to say one concept is that your branding is around a wide range of products. Like
right,
there
like
are
an umbrella.
Yeah, there are plenty of brands that one of the largest drop shippers is Wayfair, right? They drop ship furniture and all that kind of stuff, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company and they make a ton of money, but they're just drop shippers, right? Like they take other people's stuff and put it underneath their brand. And so you can start thinking about that, especially if you're not so much landed on a product, but you know the niche that you kind of want to be in.
Yep.
Or that would help you to help start thinking about branding, or you just go general and you just start developing the messaging and who you want to be as a company, and then just see how the products go. And you'll evolve over time, I think, as well.
So you have a product level and a site or corporate level.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Right. And these truths apply to either level.
Okay. Perfect.
So the brand personality is what you're known as. People call this a persona or archetype, which we'll look at in just a moment. And it's kind of a fascinating idea. And then the third one is the singular idea, the one concept that you're built upon. What is it that you want to share with the world? And again, at the product level or it could be at the site or corporate level, right? So these are three, and I realize these are, I guess you could say, intangible because they are invisible. They're harder to wrap your head around. But that's why I wanted to use Death Wish as the example tonight. So let's look at these. The first one is the brand promise. What is Mike's promise on his packaging, on his website, at the corporate level? The world's strongest coffee, right? Now, his backstory tells how he got to that idea. And it's an amazingly cool part of the whole Death Wish coffee deal to understand where he came from and how he came up with it, right? But that is his promise. If you go to his website, because I was doing this afternoon, and look at some of the comments, guess what some of his reviews are negative over?
It's too strong?
No, the opposite.
Not strong enough?
Oh, yeah. That's funny that he's not meeting his promise.
I read some of the comments and they're like, I'm so disappointed.
Yeah.
I drank it and I didn't even feel a jolt.
Oh my gosh.
That brand promise
that might be a sign that
that is so powerful. A concept in his space that, like if you rewind your mind 3 or 4 or 5 years before you knew about him and his concept, you didn't think there was a hole in the coffee market. And then as soon as you saw his positioning, you realized there was this massive gaping hole. Right?
Wow.
So that's the brand promise. And then the personality. Look at his brand, his logo. That's a pirate flag, right? Like the crossbone stuff. And then it's hard to read, but look at his first bullet point on the right-hand side. Awaken your inner rebel. So and I'll point out in a moment the archetype that he's kind of wrapped this around, but it's so obvious, and that's the rebel kind of archetype. And then the singular idea. Death Wish is created by using the strongest combination of beans, perfect roasting process. He's not real complicated. He has other things. He has mugs and he has merch. But this singular concept is so striking.
Mm.
right? And it's built on his thought process related to the idea. Now you notice that these are all completely intangible. That customer didn't know what she was going to get when she drank the coffee. That's why I didn't drink his coffee for a couple of years, because I was afraid I would be
Turned into a pirate.
But that's only a statement of the intangibility of his primary promise.
Yeah.
You don't know what it means, right?
Mm.
So, but here's the most fascinating part to me is, and this is where his genius really kicked in to me when I saw what he did. When I saw this image, I was like, wow, bro, that is some power. Whenever you can, you want to use the invisible aspects to create your own category.
Wow.
And when you can create your own category, you drag your competitors into your category and you win in your category. So look at this article. And this is Huffington Post. How much caffeine is actually in your coffee from Dunkin's to Starbucks? Now notice in the headline, they didn't use Death Wish, even though he clearly won, because he wasn't a name brand when they were doing this article. They used the best company brands that most people would know about, but they were talking about his category. And as soon as they did that, it's like it's literally like he brought them into his arena and then beat the crap out of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because there's no framework by which they can win in his category. Starbucks isn't going to change who they are. And so he created this category, and then he dominates it.
Look, there's still some space there. I just need to close that gap a little bit more, and I have my next product, right? Just even stronger coffee.
Or you go higher than 54.2 milligrams of fluid ounce.
Just straight caffeine. It's not even be coffee. I'm just going to put caffeine in your cup, and you're going to drink it.
No coffee.
Who
needs coffee?
Coffee flavoring. We'll put coffee flavoring in your caffeine.
You don't even need that anymore. Just put some like vanilla or something in your.
Oh my gosh.
When you see an example like that, you say to yourself, "Well, that's it's so obvious." Of course. But the question is, for your private label product, your niche, your area of industry that you're thinking about, how can you think through creating a category space that's currently unfocused on by your competitors? And it's hard work. It's brainstorming work. And I got to be honest. Tons of time I see people setting up a Shopify site on a faulty premise. And if you do all the hard work after the wrong choice at this level, you'll be unnecessarily suffering. So I would say to anybody, take years to get your brand promise right, and then take weeks or months to set up your website. You know what I mean? Like, don't waste all your time on sourcing or brand build, like on a website building or logo creation or those aspects. Just spend most of the time on the promise, and a promise that will resonate so deeply with the target market that they'll say, "I am so glad I heard of you. This is, this is the product for me." And it's hard work.
And I think that's a really good point too, because it really forces you to get to know your audience, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What the pain points are for your audience. You need to be in those Amazon reviews, finding out what the pain points are for your competitors for the products that you're looking at, right? And then
Kyle, you and your partner Gary did this brilliantly with your journal work. I mean, when I first saw what you guys did, I'm like, how can you make a branded journal? It's a journal. And Gary talks about the journal. I realized, oh man, he is like totally geeking out over this stuff.
He is the journal geek, and that's literally how he did it, right? As we work through any sort of product, we start with obviously the keyword research and all that stuff is a big part of it, but the really at the heart of the research for a product is in the reviews and spending the time getting to know, like going through then saying, hey, where are people really complaining about? What is missing from this product? Potentially add to it that would solve that problem. And once you can do that and you can really nail it, you're good. You'll have a winning product every single time because you're meeting a need. Because really all product does, any product, whether it's digital or physical, it's solving it and meeting a need. It's solving a problem and meeting a need. So once you've identified that, and that's a big piece, I think, what Jason's talking about with your brand, you're going to be set for success.
Do you
And
guys
look
think
at the list here. This list is interesting. Some possible promises. And again, this is the work of James Bergen. So he's got this huge list, which could apply to any niche. You could say, okay, I'm going to be the most outrageous. I'm going to be the most inspiring. I'm going to be the classiest. What's fascinating is the most strong, like the most powerful, like flavor or most powerful, isn't even on this list, which is what Mike used with Death Wish, right? The strongest, coffee. So this is obviously not a comprehensive list, but it gives you a lot of ideas.
Hey, Jason, can I ask a question? Do you think that, so Mike loves coffee, Gary loves journals and art and stuff. Do you think that do you think it may be a test of whether building a brand is for you, is ask yourself, are you passionate about a niche or a subject? Like, I guess my question is, could you build a brand around something that you aren't just crazy excited about?
I think at the root of it is a passion for, in my opinion, it's a passion for indirect sales. So if you love sales, you'll love branding, but a lot of people are direct sellers and they want to be face-to-face with people. But a lot of people who are indirect communicators have a passion for the sales process. And they tend to start to geek out over the branding concepts. I was just at a huge trade show, 30,000 people last weekend. The guy next to me flew in from Thailand where he lives. He had all his merchandise delivered by UPS or FedEx, I don't know which one. He set up his booth and he was a machine. I mean, he was this, maybe 35-year-old guy, and he was selling silk fabric. And I was like, dude, have you always been in the fabric trade? He was like, no, I'm a salesman. I could sell anything. He said, I could be selling refrigerators right now. So
funny,
but he knew his story and he knew the elements to sell his stuff.
Okay.
And so, if you like selling on Amazon, you like selling, and it's just learning a skill set, in my view. So,
good stuff.
So, archetypes is another really, really fun topic, which we don't have time to go into tonight, but it's basically the idea that you can create a brand to have a persona. And the reason marketers say that it's important to do this work is because as soon as you create a brand that has attributes of a person, you're operating under the laws of relationship and bonding. Like, I bond with a person and I want to relate to them on the character traits that they demonstrate. And we don't do that with inanimate objects. You do that with people who demonstrate that they're a magician or a jester or an outlaw, the rebel, because you understand what they are in culture. And this archetype work goes back, and it's ancient literature stuff. It's common characteristics in all kinds of historical books, and wise marketers have woven this right in. So when you look at the Death Wish coffee flag, that's a pirate flag. He's telling you can be a rebel, be an outlaw, be dangerous, drink this coffee. It's a dare to be dangerous. And that is so clearly the rebel brand. In Bergen's talk, it's outlaw. I always called it the rebel. Harley Davidson is the same brand attribute in many ways. And you could go through the list. I mean, there are lots of examples for many of these. The Explorer is like the Jeep. A Jeep Wrangler is a classic Explorer brand. REI, all the outdoor brands usually are baked around that. Nike is the classic hero brand. Warren Buffett's a classic sage. Southwest Airlines is a classic jester brand. Oracle or Microsoft are classic ruler brands. The leader brand. Apple is a classic
Burger King.
brand.
Burger King as a ruler.
What?
Burger King.
Oh.
Kind of a ruler brand.
The ruler of the birds.
I just
The king, he's
I was
going.
hungry, so
No, you get the idea with these. And so the question is, can you create this flavor in your brand work presentation? Okay, so we don't have time to unpack this a lot, but it's fascinating stuff. There's tons of literature on this if you want to just dig into that one deeper. But a wise brand will have this persona. And even if you just say, you know what, I'm going to try to weave in the caregiver concept to my brand. And I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to express the words, but I just want my brand to say something about the fact that I care about people. You know what I mean? Then you just start to work that way in your copywriting and your packaging and your backstory. The thing that's not mentioned on here that I'll just mention as well is a lot of people get huge credit culturally for having a secret archetype or attribute. And I'll tell you what I mean. Chick-fil-A, Hobby Lobby. What do those companies have in common? They're well-known Christian leaders. They're closed on Sunday. And a lot of times in a brand exercise, if you have a secret thing that not everybody knows, but the Christian community knows that Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday because they're Christians. Wow, all the Christians show up in support of that brand. And that's a powerful, and they're not being disingenuous with that. It really is part of who they are. But it is a facet of their persona that does something effective in the marketplace for them.
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff. Okay, so let's talk about the visible elements of the iceberg. And Kyle's going to walk us through that. And then we got to hustle too.
Yep. I'm going to go relatively quickly. So the visible elements are usually the ones that we think of first. At least I did when I thought about brand building. Like the immediate thing, I'm like, okay, I need a good name, right? And that is the first component of the visible elements, right? It'd be the brand name. And of course, you're going to try for something that's unique and memorable and not already associated with something that's negative, because sometimes that's easy to do. You're thinking of brand names and available, right? Because it's not only just that name available, but it's that domain name available. If you're trying to go on to Shopify or kind of build any sort of brand off of any other e-commerce platform, you have to have the domain name availability. And that will actually play a major kind of role in how you and the direction you take with your branding.
Yeah.
So brand name is an important piece. But again, brand name, I think it really comes out of the work that Jason really laid out and sort of the invisible side of the branding. It becomes a lot easier to come up with a name, I think, when you've done a little bit of the work, right? And then the logo as well as part of that is kind of fitting into the brand. I know actually the group helped me with my skate brand logo, and you guys were amazing feedback. I was like, just kept coming in, and we got a lot of stuff, and we're actually gonna meet this week and kind of discuss what kind of feedback we got. So again, that was really, really cool. And again, that's the logo piece. And then taglines. And tagline, I think, is one of the harder things to nail with a visible element. But there are some really kind of interesting examples. I think with that was Dollar Shave Club had shave time, shave money, right? So they were kind of being a joke. They're definitely in the Joker side of their either ethos and their persona, right? And then there's like the famous Got Milk one as well, right? So there's interesting ways they've put a lot of time into that, but it takes a lot of work to get to that point. And then how your brand looks, so with graphics and the fonts that you use, and even this kind of storytelling that you do with that goes a long way. So there's a lot of pieces. But again, this is the visible stuff. The invisible stuff is where you do the bulk of this work, I think, and Jason would argue. And this kind of flows out of that and becomes a lot easier. These steps are a lot harder to do if you haven't done the work beforehand, right?
Exactly.
But it becomes a lot more fun to work on these things when you have a clear focus and a clear vision of who you want your brand to be and who you are as a brand. This stuff becomes a lot more engaging and fun. And really helps to provide the guidelines, the kind of the guardrails, so you know where you should be looking and where you shouldn't be. And that's really, really helpful.
Brilliant. Yep. And as you were just saying, I mean, of all the visible elements, the brand name probably the most important of all of them, for sure. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it because it has so much opportunity to do you harm or to do you good in terms of how customers will remember you. And there's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. We'll look at a few of them here in just a second. So, that's a key piece. My computer's spinning right now.
Uh-oh.
Pull up the animated GIFs.
No problem. Let me jump in. So while you're fixing that, so guys,
Okay.
Those of you that might have joined late, so in lesson 4, page 3, we talk about brand building versus merchant building, and in that we say that merchant building, most folks know what merchant building is, and that's the majority of Amazon sellers. You're just selling on Amazon to make a profit. You'll sell anything that's profitable. A lot of RA and OA folks, that's what you do. You're not concerned about a certain brand most of the time. You pick up something off the clearance shelf and you'll buy it. And you can take that same exact approach to private label. And I would venture that most of you who are just getting started, that's where you're at. You just want to start private label. You're not so concerned about a certain niche, but we know that there's also those of you who are wanting to build a brand and you have an idea and you want to blossom that out into a full-blown brand. That's why we have these guys on here. And so Jenny and I know the merchant building side, but we're not experts on the brand building. So that's why we have Jason and Kyle talking about what you need to think about if a brand, a full-blown brand like Death Wish Coffee is in your future. Take these steps. So if this isn't for you right now, it's totally okay. If this is if this feels over your head, again, totally okay. This is the brand building side of private label. So just want to make sure that clear that up.
But one thing that was really cool that I think Kyle said, well, you guys both kind of touched on it, but Kyle, you said, where'd it go? Just the idea of looking through the reviews
Yes.
and using that to figure out what your brand promise is. I think that those are some things to consider early on. You might not know if you want to go this direction or not at this point in your private label journey. And so I think what's being shared here is awesome for just to keep filed back in the back of your mind so that you have some things to fall into or lean back into when you get to that point. And if you do pursue that, but looking at reviews to see how you can position your product is awesome. What a great, very good piece of advice there.
No doubt. Yep. Okay, I'm back. Professional naming methods is the next little topic, and then we have just one slide after this, and then we'll do Q&A. So we got lots of time for Q&A.
Cool.
So the question is, what tools do you use to come up with a name? And so there's a list of tried and true methods. And so this column on the left is basically the naming strategy. The center column is the example. And then the right-hand column is sort of input or suggestion. So a surname or last name is the first, naming concept. Or the first name, right? So you've got Forbes for the last name, Michaels for the first name, or, of course, first and last name. The other thing that you can do there that's not mentioned is you can do two people's name. My favorite brand of all time in terms of this topic is Smith & Hawken, which is a brand that Target carries in their gardening space. That's two people's last name. And that creates sort of a proper sounding British name, but you can also use a place, right? I've always thought that Lake Taps anything would make a cool name because I live by Lake Taps. I never made a brand name Lake Taps anything, but I can see how
sounds like a beer.
There you go.
On tap or cold brew.
Exactly.
A descriptive is
Liberty Jean beer.
I'm not sure that would go. Where are we? Okay, descriptive is easy to do. This is like Whole Foods, Speedy Lube, anything that describes the outcome to the customer is a great potential name. A global sounding name, something international, or General Motors is their example. an abstract or evocative name, Fortune magazine, you know, those types of ideas. A mascot or symbol like Jaguar. Idiomatic or conversational, Whataburger. I would say Death Wish Coffee falls into that category. A mutated word or abbreviated word, mobile is the example. A composite word, I believe that's referred to as a portmanteau in proper grammar. So two words shoved together, microprocessor and software, created Microsoft. An invented word, which is also called a neologism. So that's a new word. You come up with a word, or initials or numbers. And so you basically, you know, when you're working through this framework, you want to say to yourself, okay, I've got a product concept, I've got a niche concept. You know, how can I, and just brainstorm, how could I use my last name creatively? How could I use my first name creatively? How could I use my local geographic places creatively? You know, and you just start creating concepts. And what happens over time is just like any other creative process, you kind of start to gravitate towards ones, and you get your creative juices flowing, and you get, you know, kind of a few ideas you like. And then I would highly suggest that you run them past people. You say, hey, here's what I'm trying to put together. What do you think? And even little online polls with your group, your Facebook group or whatever, are always sort of helpful ideas to get other people's feedback. Now, final slide. Somebody asked earlier today in Private Label the Easy Way, how do you do the process? What is the process for protecting? And so, so let me just walk you through these steps. The first one is do a Google search. See if other similar uses are out there. And if somebody else is already using pretty much the same concept, dump it and go back to the drawing board. You don't want to have a name that's one letter off from somebody else. You just don't. Second step is use trademarks.justia.com. Justia is a legal site, and they have a database for trademarks that you can look up any trademark and see if it's already taken. Now, the way trademarks work is you take them by category, or you try to claim them by category. So, for example, there's an Old Dominion college, and there's an Old Dominion trucking company, and neither of those can sue each other because they operate in different industry categories. So, but you want to look to see if anybody else in your category has taken the trademark and gone through the process. I've done this several times for my own brands. One time we were paused in the process because Liberty of London, which is a big company, thought Liberty Jane might be too similar. So they asked to inquire about what we were doing, who we were, and they looked into it, and it's a formal step in the process. But then they ultimately let it go through. So the third step is look at your department, your state department at your state level, the Department of Commerce or Business, whatever it's called for your state, and see if there's any business functioning in your state with a similar or related name. And then go ahead, you know, if you've already got an LLC and you really want to plow forward, then you want to do a DBA or set up a company. You know, you want to have some legal protection. Now, I would highly encourage you to not worry about step 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 until you start to decide, are you really going to sell through this brand? I mean, is it going to be, I mean, if you're selling 50 widgets on Amazon, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's good.
But if you say, hey, I just sold $10,000 under this label, and I'm kind of starting to like it, you know, what do I do? These are the steps. So the registered trademark process, usually I would say 9 to 12 months is what it takes. The U.S. Department of the U.S. Patent and Trade Office. And so you go through the process. You can do it on LegalZoom.com if you want. The way I look at it is, if you're going to screw something up and look back and realize you screwed up because you only paid $79, and your whole business is hinging on this stuff, I would pay an intellectual property attorney to help you through the process. The one we've used in the Seattle area, I think it costs us about $1,200, $1,500. Well worth it once we realize, okay, we're going to own these for the long term. Now, here's the technical usage of the TM and R symbols. When you apply for registered trademark status, you're supposed to begin using the TM, which is option 2 on a keyboard, a Mac keyboard, by the way. The keyboard command is option 2. And then option R is the registered trademark. And then once you receive your registered trademark status, you're supposed to stop using the TM and start using the R. Those are the technical usages of those two symbols. Now, most people don't know that, and so they just start throwing TM on stuff because they kind of figure that's what you're supposed to do. And it's no real harm or foul. That just is technically supposed to tell other companies where you're at in the process. So.
I didn't know that, Jason. I'm just playing around with my keyboard, and then Kyle puts crushing Amazon trademark.
I'm just testing it out right now.
Awesome.
So that is our 2 topics. Now, sadly, we don't have time to go into more, but yeah, this is actually 2 out of, I think in our mentoring program we have a full month on branding, so it's like 12 topics that we go through. But hopefully these 2 have been helpful, and let's jump into questions.
Rob wants to know, what about if you have a UK keyboard?
Oh man, I don't know.
Upgrade.
That's right.
That's right.
Actually, we've answered a ton of questions in the, Christy's been in the background typing away,
Awesome.
but I do have one that Christy did answer, and I think you've already answered it, but I want to make sure that you get a chance to reiterate.
Sure.
Anshik, I'm sorry, Anshik, if I screwed your name up, but beautiful name. She asked, also, at what point of product getting traction will it make the most sense in branding your product? As in, is there any monthly sales threshold that a seller needs to take into account before thinking about investing and building a brand?
Yeah, there's no right answer, but it takes your, I guess, discretion. But
Okay.
Certainly before you start to spend any money on a good logo package, or before you try to build out anything that takes expense money, you want to start thinking through, is it defensible? Because the last thing you want to do is set up a brand and have it not be available to you after you've already started to invest time, money, and energy into it. The other thing I didn't say, but the Google search will help you a lot at the beginning, because one of the things that you also want to look out for is unintended baggage. We have a person in our universe who created a brand, and as it turns out, it's the same name as a demonic exorcism in the history of somewhere, Salem or something. So yeah. When you Google it, you get their product and demon-possessed.
Well, maybe that could be their upsell, right?
No,
like they get their product and you get
there's no good outcome from that. So, but you want to avoid that kind of stuff, and it's Google, right? You search. Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. Kari wants to know, when does it make sense to start focusing on a private label brand versus selling a bit of everything as a new seller?
That's a good one for you, man.
Honestly, and everybody might have different opinions, but I think if you have a desire, you've had a really cool idea, you're passionate about something, then maybe go right into brand building. But you can do both at the same time too. You could sell a private label, product after product. I think most people, what they do is they start selling product after product, and they're like, "Ooh, I really like this one. This is, selling really well." Then they'll go. That's probably the usual path. But you could go right into it. You could go right into it thinking, "I'm going to do a Death Wish coffee type of product," and just go right into it at the beginning. That's a longer haul, a longer road for sure, in my opinion. Jenny, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that it really I think it depends on your goals, and taking a step back and looking at what are your business goals, and starting there. If your goal, if you know from the front end that you want to build a brand, and that's the whole point of your business and all of that, then you're going to want to start focusing on that sooner,
Mhm.
right? But
Mhm.
maybe you don't know right now. And so then I agree with what Ryan said. Christy also wants to answer this one live. Christy, do you have any thoughts?
I know that I'm not on video, but yeah, so I actually, what worked for me, I started off with a bunch of random things, whatever was selling, and then I found that there was one that I could create a lot of spin-off, very similar concepts, just different themes. And
Mhm.
that's when I realized that I really need to start making a brand out of this. So it wasn't my initial, I didn't think much about it.
Mhm.
So I started off in that path, and then it just turned out, oh, well, if I just spin it a little bit to this audience, or if I do a little bit to that, different theme, different, whatever. So then I realized I really had a brand and I really needed to build that out. So that was the path that I took. So yeah, it wasn't a decision. It was more of a, this just makes perfect sense to do it now. Once I have these 3 products, I can build
one other little tidbit on this one is that, you know, the beauty of doing private label and it kind of working through a lot of categories at first is it exposes you to different communities of customers.
Mhm.
Customers are very different. I mean, if you think about a construction worker versus a librarian, you know, I mean, customers behave very differently.
Mhm.
And, you know, you kind of don't even think about that until you start selling to them and you think, wait a minute, these people are whatever, you know, fill in the adjective. So it gives you a chance to really think, do I like these people? Do I want to be with these people, hanging out, answering questions all the time, doing events, getting them new stuff? I mean, so doing the, you know, private label the easy way beginning steps, I think gives you a huge leg up to think through who do you want to work with,
Right.
So.
Well, it kind of goes back to Death Wish Coffee, right? You have to ask yourself, do you really want to have all of your customers be everyone who's just jacked out of their minds on caffeine? Is that the emails that you want to respond to? Because you imagine how long they're going to be.
So they're going to type fast.
Consider, right? Well, it's just long because they're jacked. So they're like, 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's really funny.
Good stuff.
That's right. So guys, there's not a right or wrong way. This just shows you that that if you want to build a brand, there is lots to think about. But if you have no idea what you want to do right now, it's totally fine. If you never decide to build a brand, totally fine. If you just want to sell product after product, that's cool. But these guys are the experts on how to build a brand, what to think about, what all the steps are involved in it. And so Anshik wants to know about more information about your mentoring program. Yeah, it's a Shopify mentoring program. We actually, there's several people that are in our private label program that's in it as well. You guys want to talk about that just for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. You know, it's I started teaching Shopify stuff last June on Udemy. Didn't know how that would go. I've never done Udemy before, and the course is totally taken off. It's the #1 e-commerce course now. Jim Cockrum has, you know, presented it to his community, and it's gotten out there. We're over 4,500 students there. And then in January, Kyle and I started doing a group coaching mentoring program, 6 months. Winning on Shopify.com is the blog. That's where I'm blogging. I'm trying to do 100 blog articles this year on Shopify. But what I'm finding is a lot of it is also on things like branding, the use of Pinterest, social media, email marketing, product strategy. So the anchor is Shopify, but really a lot of the topics are general business, e-commerce stuff. So.
Cool. Got a couple questions. How do your different product brands fit with your companies? What if I wanted a coffee brand and then a clothing brand? How do I fit that with my company brand and name? I have a few ideas for private label products, but having a hard time choosing a company name that fits with all of them.
Yeah. Well, those two combinations, I would say that obviously Mike could show you. I mean, look at Death Wish Coffee. Awesome. He has a significant merch system, which, you know, t-shirts and clothing is easy for merchandising.
Right.
Tried and true, well-worn path once you develop a master brand concept. So, but if you were just saying, I love clothing, I love coffee, I would say choose one.
Yeah.
and go deep with that one thing. And then if it's successful and you scale it up, then figure out how to launch a different, brand. Unless, again, you led with coffee and then you just had merchandise that could be t-shirts and that kind of thing.
One thing that the brand gives you is a tribe. Like once you get your branding down, you have a tribe of people that are passionate about your brand. It's a lot easier to sell merch, get clothing lines and stuff like that to people who already love you and trust you, right? It's a lot harder to do that separately without having a brand. So, I mean, I think you could almost add a clothing brand to any real brand.
Right.
Because it's just an extension of who you are and reaching out to your tribe. So.
The other thing that just to point out on this step is, and so not to complicate things, but you can create a site level brand strategy like we did for Pixie Fair, and we positioned it as the internet's largest doll clothes pattern website. And if you go to that site, the first thing you notice in the top left corner is it says over 2 million patterns downloaded thanks to you. That is a statement of leadership. And it's positioning that site as the internet's largest doll clothes pattern website. Now, who knew there was such a thing, but whatever, nonetheless. Now, what we do on that site, though, is we sell well over 70 brands. And our brand, the Liberty Jane brand, is like, we consider it the anchor brand in what you might call a virtual little shopping mall. And we curate it. It's not like Etsy or eBay or Amazon where people can throw anything on it. We curate what's on there, but we are the anchor brand, and there are 70 other brand owners, and they're all making money, and they're our partners.
You are the Amazon of doll clothes.
Do that. So.
All right, the questions are coming now. Rob asked, with archetypes, does a niche mean that you need to choose a particular archetype? For example, kitchen spatulas obviously would be caregiver. However, would outlaw ever work?
Yeah.
They're not. The category does not imply the archetype, and in fact, that's the beauty of positioning. Is if like soap is a good category. If every soap company demonstrates themselves as the caregiver brand, like Dove, like gentle caregiver, and you position yourself as the world's strongest soap that will burn your face off, maybe
Axe body lotion or whatever, right?
You position yourself against what most people do.
Yeah.
And so the archetypes allow you to say, what's the common way in which people present themselves in this category, and can I pick one that really sets me apart?
Yeah, so an example in like the kitchen space would be like chefs, right? So Martha Stewart, she's very calm, caregiver, totally different than Gordon Ramsay, who'd be the outlaw. If I was selling spatulas, I'd do what kind of Gordon Ramsay's doing in Hell's Kitchen type thing, and you have an archetype that's totally different.
Yeah.
Cool. Audrey wants to know, in building your brand, how many products should you start with?
One really, 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 really good one. And
as many as it takes to find a good one.
No, honestly, there are a lot of companies that have built themselves on one remarkable brand, a branded product. And, a lot of times what follows after that is decreasing margin, decreasing enthusiasm, decreasing everything. So it really does start with the hunt for a great product. Great brands are built by great products. And I mean, that's the challenge with going to Alibaba or something like that and trying to find a product. The challenge is if you find a mediocre product, you have extra hard work at the branding level to make it compelling. But if you can find a product that's extraordinary by itself, the branding's easy or easier. So that's the balance between trying to find a semi-commodity product and a truly unique product. But coffee is a commodity, for goodness sakes, in most cases, right? So the work can be done. But anyway. Yeah.
Hey, Jason, from the chat, guys, if you have questions, if you could put them in the Q&A, that'd be awesome. It's just a little bit easier for us to track and they don't get lost in the chat feed. But I'm trying to go through those, but there was a question about the Winning on Shopify course. It's not open right now. Is that correct?
Correct. I think we're going to launch again this summer. Okay.
So do you have a place where they can get on a waiting list then? Is it on the site?
If they join our list by getting our ebook.
Okay.
There's an ebook. We can give out a link too. We'll
Yeah,
make it
yeah.
a group.
That works.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, Anshik again wants to know, at what point will it make the most sense to get my brand on Shopify, considering the high conversion rate my brand can have on Amazon?
Well,
It's a great question, Kyle. You're
I
up.
can answer that because it's kind of multi-pronged. I think a couple of things you can think about. One is that there's still a cost, even if your brand is converting on Amazon. You still have to pay Amazon the referral fee, right, of 50%. And you don't get the email address. It's much harder for you to upsell. It's much harder for you to develop your brand on Amazon as a platform. They make it difficult on purpose because technically you selling your products on Amazon is really building Amazon's brand. And that's how they have it designed. And they will definitely let you know if you try to violate that process, right? So moving to Shopify allows you to really establish your brand. It allows you to do the upsell, kind of bringing in your products or even upselling or other people's products. You can sell other people's products. I'm actually testing this right now where I'm actually using Amazon products as upsells for Shopify. So I have like good lead gen products, but I have an import tool that's pulling in specific products from Amazon and actually drop shipping from Amazon other people's products. It's kind of funny. I'll tell you if it works well or not. I'm still testing it, but it was an interesting concept where you're just taking other products off that. So having your own platform is really, really key. I think the biggest thing about Shopify and one of the key factors of e-commerce is eventually owning the checkout process. Because I think the goal of any real true e-commerce business is that one of them is you own that checkout process, and you don't own that process.
But you also want to own the customer acquisition process.
Exactly, the whole
sales process, the checkout process,
the whole thing.
The process. You want to be in control of all the process.
Yeah, I mean, and you could actually potentially have higher conversion rate on your Shopify store than you would on Amazon.
Yeah,
potential because you have more control. You have much more control what you can do. So yeah, I think that it's once you have that product in place or you have that niche or brand that you really know you want to be in, then you should go for it and start rocking and rolling on Shopify.
I would say the other trigger is if you're selling well on Amazon and you have the mental, emotional, and financial capacity to begin acquiring your own customers and thinking through front-end marketing, it's time to consider Shopify.
That's good.
So that would be the trigger for me. If you're barely scratching it out and making it mentally, emotionally, and financially on Amazon, then keep refining that before you try to layer on anything else.
Cool. What are the top 3 tips that Jason can give for building an amazing brand like Death Wish and scaling it to such a high level that Death Wish has achieved? Get a Super Bowl commercial.
Yeah.
For one.
That would work.
I would say that the 2 biggest factors are the brand promise, which means your unique promise to customers and the uniqueness of it. And so that's the biggest issue. How can you be uniquely positioned in the mind of the customer? And then the second one is the name itself. So we went through both sides of this whole thing tonight. We dug into both of those. But those 2 together are the 2 biggest issues. And the third one I would say is a long obedience in the same direction. Once you start to work on this stuff, you can't flip flop and jump around. You got to just keep, if you see real traction at the beginning, potential, keep working on it.
Yeah.
That's good.
We're looking at Mike Brown's finished product after, whatever, 7, 8 years, 10 years. We're not looking at his first website.
Yeah.
And you're not limited to one brand. Like, I think I have 5 that I'm working on at the same time.
Wow.
But I'm kind of crazy. So, I mean, you have to do it at your own. I don't recommend it.
Are you drinking that Death Wish coffee?
Too much. It's an ID drip at this point. Yeah.
Good. Okay, what else?
Michelle wants to know, this is a business question. I'm an LLC. However, a friend of mine who is a sole proprietor, can she do a DBA being a sole proprietor?
Yeah, I'm not an attorney or a CPA, but I think you can. Yeah,
I think so too.
Yeah,
I think you can. Although I'm neither of those things.
Yeah, I'm not either. Yep, Frank, you are right. Yep. Guys, that's all the questions we got right now. I know there's gonna be more. We can post in the. You guys can post them in the Facebook group because these guys are in the Facebook group. Feel free to ask away. Yes, Bob, we will get a copy of all the questions and answers. I'll post that as well.
Yep.
So awesome. We'll cut it off there, guys. Thank you so much, Christy. Thanks for being in the chat room and helping out during that. You guys are the
Good
best.
times, guys. Thanks for letting us hang out with you.
So much fun. Yeah, I mean, this is a cool, really cool stuff.
Really cool.
So, stop the recording.